Welcome to Fanalysis, where we combine the analytics of fantasy football with the metrics of sports betting, and the result is where the smart money is landing. And for more on that, we bring in a sports handicapper you can find on Twitter as Old Man Who Bets. Geoff Sheasby joining us once again. Geoff, we have some really interesting games to talk about this week, and I want to start off with the Jaguars and the Texans, because the Jags now get the first crack at a Texans team that just fired their head coach. So how are the Sharps going to look to monetize this coup d'etat?
Yeah, Steve, 2020 has been, a crazy year, and that doesn't stop when we extended to the NFL season. Looking at weeks 1 through 4 here, and I got to give a hat tip to Jared from the Sports Grid, who's been on Fanalysis a couple times, but he was looking at home favorites of more than 4.5 points through weeks 1 through 4. Historically, those huge home favorites have covered at 44%. Enter 2020, those huge home favorites have been covering at 63%. So, the NFL is upside down. The obvious picks have been winning, and that brings us to the Texans, right? A home favorite at -6. They fit that void. Will the trend continue? We'll see. When we look at this Texans team, you said it, they just fired their coach. It was a coup, an uprising, a player revolt. J.J. Watt spoke up, and all of a sudden, Bill O'Brien, GM and coach, out the door. And I think personally, there's nothing more liberating than betting on a team that has just overthrown their coach, the power of the people unifying and making change. So, where does that narrative leave us? I think it's a team that's been, quote, held down by their leader. They're ready to play their own style of football. They're ready to get back to greatness. We look at Bill O'Brien's moves, shipping out DeAndre Hopkins, the list goes on. They've been questionable. It's not like he's an offensive juggernaut anyway. This is a talented team on both sides of the ball. And J.J. Watt, who obviously is a man of the people, is dying to reconnect with the fans. Just last week, I think even maybe yesterday, he said one of those things I'm excited about right now, this is right after his coach get fired, is hopefully getting on the same page of the fan base again. This is motivation times 10. And I think that Vegas agrees, right? This is an 0-4 team with a -6 line. That's a pretty strong line for a team that hasn't won and hasn't, quite frankly, looked very good, especially going against the Jaguars team that has been overperforming. So I think it's going to be an interesting one. We open up the hood a little bit, and we see Jacksonville with an offensive efficiency ranked 6th, but going against a stat called Dave, which takes in more preseason expectations. That's at 23. So there's a huge room for their offense, I think, to regress.
Well, I'd like to bring up this point as well, that in 8 games that the Jags and the Texans have played this year, they've hit the over 6 times, but I'm guessing that's probably not due to great offenses.
Yeah, exactly. It's been interesting. I mean, their defense, the Jacksonville Jaguars currently ranking 32 out of 32 in terms of defensive efficiency. Houston right there with them at 25. So we look at the offense, right? Obviously the Jacksonville Jaguars, again, that's 6th compared to 23rd based on the stats that's factoring preseason expectations. That has been overachieving. And Houston on the other side of the ball has been underachieving. They look lost without Hopkins. David Johnson looks good, but will Fuller step up? Will Cook step up? Will any of their other receivers potentially step up? And I think, quite frankly, if there's ever a get-right spot for this offense, it comes after firing their coach against a team that quite literally can't stop anybody on defense. So I think the line is strong for the Texans. I love them -6 this week. It's risky. We're trying to catch that falling knife, which is something we're not going to do when it gets to the Jets, and we'll talk to that in a second. But it's a talented team with some motivation, still fighting to maybe make the wild card. So I think the Texans absolutely bring it this week.
Catch the falling knife. I like that imagery there. The Eagles getting 7.5 on the road in Pittsburgh. Philly has picked up their first win of the season, but now we're at the quarter pole of the season, and we're really starting to see the weight of each one of these games. Has Philly given strong performances individually or as a team?
They haven't given any performance that's even remotely worthy of the word strong, Steve. This is an Eagles team that's coming off an ugly first win of the season. They defeated the backup and the third-string quarterback of the 49ers. This comes after tying the Bengals, who sure look improved, but it's still the Bengals. Their offensive efficiency is 26. Their defensive efficiency also 26. They lost to the Rams. fine. And then they lost to Washington, who, just benched their starting quarterback for Kyle Allen. So this isn't a strong resume. This is a cause for alarm. And I think this is a great time to continue to fade the Eagles. I think we look at the position players for the Eagles. They're 33 out of 33 in terms of QB ratings. That's worse than Haskins, Darnold, Trubisky, Mullins, and even Jeff Driscoll. Their running backs ranked 23rd out of 34. Their wide receivers are 68 and 72 out of 76. The list goes on. It's just a very, very ugly team right now, and I think it's going to be potentially a pretty long game.
All right, so the Steelers' offense, though, conversely, has actually put up some big numbers, but against some subpar defenses. How should they measure up against Philly's D?
Yeah, Philly's D is potentially the only bright spot here. They're ranked 10th in terms of defensive efficiency compared to 27th in their offense. But the Steelers have looked great on both sides of the ball and are coming off a makeshift bye due to the COVID cancellation last week. So this is a team that, one, needs to win. Their division is super, super competitive at the top. We're looking at the Ravens and the Browns, both with 3 wins already, 1 loss. The Steelers, of course, 3-0 with 1 last game played. But the Steelers' offensive efficiency 9th, their defensive efficiency 3rd. So this is a defense that I think is going to continue to absolutely bring it this week against, again, the falling knife Eagles. This offense can't really do anything. So, and I think one last thing to note about the Steelers offense is it's looked better week over week. They were rusty in the first half of week 1, and then they had a strong showing in the second half. They had a sloppy game, I'd say, defensively against the Broncos a little bit, but Ben threw for 300 yards. Connor ran for over 100. And then in week 3, again, I think this is a Texans team that isn't as bad as people think it is. So I consider that a good win and a good cover, 28-21, where Ben was efficient enough, 2 TDs, no interceptions, and James Connors ran for over 100 again. So I like the Steelers -7 here in a game that they need to win, especially having that motivation to potentially win the division against an Eagles team that is really struggling to find their identity.
We're looking at your top plays of the week so far, and the Cowboys, 9.5-point favorites against the Giants. And please just walk me through your betting relationship with the Giants, if you would, please.
Yeah, the Giants, they quite frankly bamboozled me 2 weeks in a row here. They showed off gritty efforts against the Steelers and the Bears. Of course, they were both losses, but they were close games. They seemed to have a chance of winning. And then they come out against, the backups of the San Francisco 49ers and get absolutely throttled at home. So then, of course, we fast forward to week 4 after a blowout loss where they showed no signs of life, playing one of the hottest teams in the league on the road, on the West Coast against the LA Rams. They keep that close. They cover. They lose 17-9. So, the Giants have been all over the place, and maybe the Rams overlooked that game. I'm not entirely sure. But now we enter a divisional matchup versus the Cowboys. Looking at the history between the Cowboys and the Giants, it's been all Dallas since 2017. They've won their last 6 matchups, and they've covered all 6 of those as well. The Cowboys here, of course, have one of the best offenses in the league and one of the best offenses they've had in years. They're ranking 3rd in terms of points per game at 31.5. But they do have a defense that's leaving a little bit to be desired. They're currently ranked 24th in terms of defensive efficiency. But, the Giants are 32nd in terms of defensive efficiency. Their offense looks pretty okay, or their defense looks pretty okay, I would say, at 11th. But when we factor in those preseason expectations, that drops to 17. So it looks like it's just one of those, with a clear advantage for the Cowboys. We're looking at 30th and 17th versus 6th and 24th offense and defensive efficiency, of course. Add in the fact that it's a division rivalry that the Cowboys really need to win here. And I would love to take, the Cowboys -9.5, riding that cover trend of home teams at home more than 4.5, continuing to cover in a year that just continues to surprise us.
Well, another one of your top plays is another New York team in the Jets and taking on the Cardinals. Arizona is favored by 7 in this game. The key qualifier, picking a trap game, though, is that the underdog is capable of winning. Does that apply here?
Are the Jets capable of winning, period, Steve? It seems to be the question we should be asking. I feel like we pile on them every week, but things just don't get easier for them, right? How can we ever trust them? They just lost to the 3rd-string quarterback of the Broncos, and they allowed 37 points to be scored in that, including a game-winning drive under 4 or 5 minutes? Allowing 13 points in the 4th quarter, just inexcusable. What once was, kind of the backbone, which was that defense, got completely exploited. And now we're looking at the Arizona Cardinals, who are desperate for a win off back-to-back losses. And then, go back to the Jets for a second here. We're looking at Sam Darnold out, Joe Flacco in. Is that an upgrade? The line hasn't moved, so probably not. Apples to apples, oranges to oranges. It's mediocre either way. And the stats back that up. The Jets are 28th in terms of offensive efficiency. I think the only good news here really for potential Jets fans and or Jets backers is that the Cardinals offense has struggled a little bit. They're 25th in terms of offensive efficiency, but they are adapting. Hopkins is a little banged up. Kendrick Drake hasn't looked as good as he should, but Chase Edmonds has looked awesome. I would expect to see more carries from him this week. And the Cardinals defense is ranked below the Jets at 19th in terms of defensive efficiency. So, if there was ever a spot in terms of defensive efficiency stats to back the Jets, it's probably this week. Factor in that they have played some good defenses, the Bills, the 49ers, the Colts, and, I'll give the Broncos an asterisk for this comparison, that their offense should trend up. But with Joe Flacco, with Adam Gase, a lot of players that haven't played together, are banged up receivers. Le'Veon Bell might be back. How healthy is he? We don't really know. Frank Gore looks, unfortunately, as old as he is. A great leader in the locker room, but that's not translating into wins on the field. And I just can't back this Jets team until they show me any sort of signs of life or any sort of semblance of not a collapse in the fourth quarter. So as much as I would love to support them, the defensive efficiency metrics almost get us there, but narrative, the eye test just doesn't. So I'm taking the Cardinals -7.
Yeah, before you jump on a bandwagon, the wagon's got to be moving in a certain direction. Don't jump on it while it's still stationary. We're going to get more into your Jets and Giants games in our other segment. But for now, I'm Steve Overmyer along with Geoff Sheasby, and this is Fanalysis.